Good morning. Good morning. Continuing on with the book of Ruth, I've chosen to do Ruth chapter 1, verses 19 through 22, and just deal with that section. It's a very pivotal section in the book of Ruth. Um, let's just do a recap of everything that God has been doing in the book of Ruth and everything that Ruth has experienced. I mean, what Naomi has experienced. Naomi and her husband, they leave the place of Bethlehem and go to the place of Moab. Now, Moab is an the enemies of Israel. So they go to a hostile territory in search for more food. Um, and uh, and then what happens next is her husband dies. About 10 years, probably 10 years later, or at some time afterwards, her two sons marry um, Moabite women, which was forbidden for an Israelite. But they, but what they do is that they assimilate into the land and they adopt their customs, they adopt their wives, and now her two sons die. She doesn't have anybody. Um, all she has is the wives that are left over. So they journey um, about 100 miles on foot. So imagine walking 100 miles on foot, probably about halfway down the road that Naomi tells them to turn back. At first, both of them say no. Um, and then the wife of one, Orpah, decides to leave, but Ruth clings to her. That's kind of where we're at right now, and they have just now entered the town. Um, so I've titled this, When God is for You and You Cannot See It. Oftentimes we don't see God's sovereignty, God's providence, because God's providence is his invisible hand that we often do not see. Very rarely, I think we do. Um, when when we do, it's very much of a God thing. So that's kind of where we're at. And the big idea here is that she blames God for her misfortunes. She blames God for everything. Um, some words I want us to understand. Naomi means kindness, pleasant, my delight. So oftentimes, especially more in the Old Testament, names are significant. They describe who you really are or that they are the direct opposite. Here, Naomi is not very pleasant. She's not very encouraging. She's not kind. Then you have this word, which very rare word. It's this Hebrew word. It's the word mata. That's the Hebrew word. It means to bitter, enraged, be bewildered. She is bitter. She's very bitter off of her experiences and doesn't see that God is behind the scenes. He's allowing these situations to happen so he can bless her. So he could bless her. Moving on, it's a very rare word. It means it's the Hebrew word Shaddai, and it means the Almighty, the most powerful God. Here, this word often has connotation. So it means a God who is involved in blessing and cursing, judgment and power. So some scholars think that it is a synonym for Yahweh. Um, In the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, um, this word shada is translated as kurios 9 times and theos 4 times. Theos in the New Testament is the word God. It's the word God. Uh, Kurios can either mean Lord, or it's often a title for Jesus Christ. So places where this talks about blessing and cursing: Genesis 17:1, Genesis 28:3, Genesis 35:11, Numbers chapter 24 verses 4 and 16. Um, this idea of judgment, this word shada, comes up in Isaiah 13:6, Joel chapter 1 verse 15, as well as Job 5:17. This idea of power, that God is the powerful one here, is in Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 24, Psalm 68:15, and also Psalm 91. Next is this word Yahweh. Yahweh is one of the 2 most common words for God, and then in particular Yahweh. You got to have a little bit of spit in there. Yahweh is God's covenant name. It's also the name that would never be uttered. So instead of saying Yahweh, the Hebrew would say Adonai. It's God's name that was not to be uttered, implied as his holy name. It's one of the 2 most common names for God. Normally when the term Yahweh is used, it's either going to be Yahweh or Elohim. Interesting enough, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, it uses both Elohim as well as Yahweh. This gives us a nice understanding, and this idea of barley grain, because we're going to encounter barley grain, a grain widely cultivated in Egypt in the Exodus 9:31, and Palestine, Leviticus 27:16, and Deuteronomy 8:8. Barley was used as food for both animals and people. Numbers chapter 5 verse 15, Judges 7:13, 1 Kings 4:28, and John 6:9. Was typically harvested in March around the time of the Passover. Ruth 1:22, our passage, and 2 Samuel 12:21. And what Naomi don't realize is that her tragedy happened at the perfect time. Probably 3 months before or after, if she were to go to Bethlehem, there would be nothing left. So even in tragedy, God allowing tragedy, it's his perfect time. It's his perfect time. So let's read chapter 1, verse 19 through 20. So the 2 of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And then when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara. Call me bitter. For the Almighty, Shaddai, has dealt very bitter with me." And she gives her reason. "I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? Why call me kindness? Why call me pleasant? When Yahweh has testified against me, and Shaddai, the Almighty, has brought calamity upon me." So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So around March is when they're getting there. Naomi and Ruth arrive in Bethlehem, and they are obviously exhausted from their journey. The town is both in shock and excited to see Naomi, their long lost friend and family member. But the depression is clear. You can see the depression on her face. She's not the same person as when she left. Calamity has come upon her. But the depression is very clear of Naomi's response. The word calamity, it is in what we call in Hebrew as a hiphil, and and it means a cause of action. And in this case, she believes that God has caused evil upon her. She believes that God is actively involved in the oppression of Naomi to treat her badly. Naomi believes God has actively engaged in bringing evil to her life. But Naomi and Ruth come at the barley harvest, a time when the harvest time has just started. Barley harvest is the earliest of the harvest, just after the rain, about mid-April, March or mid-April. Naomi is clinging to one last bit of hope that God may be gracious to her. She's clinging on hope. Let me turn this to you. Some of you may be clinging on hope, clinging because you've just had tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, and you're just clinging on that last bit of hope. And I don't know what that means for you, but cling on to the hope. It won't always be bad. God's got a miracle waiting for you. He's going to display this miracle to both Naomi and Ruth of everything. And at the end of the book, we're going to see this complete turnaround for Naomi. That is the end of this part of Ruth. See you next week.